The door burst open at midnight. The sound was like thunder in my ears. 1 second, I was half asleep, clinging to a fragile dream of safety, and the next, my body was yanked awake by the violent crash of wood against the wall. My heart jumped, rattling inside my chest so hard I thought it might rip free. I turned toward the doorway, my eyes wide, my breath caught in my throat. And there he was. A dark shadow filled the frame, his broad shoulders blotting out the light from the hallway. His face was twisted with rage, and in his hand, a metal rod glinted under the dim bulb. His boots slammed against the floor as he stormed toward me. But that wasn't the part that crushed me the most. It was her, my mother. She was standing right behind him, her arms folded, her eyes cold, her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't say a word. She didn't move. She didn't try to stop him. She just watched as he charged straight at me. I froze. My body refused to obey me. Fear glued me to the bed. "Mom," my voice cracked, trembling with disbelief. "Mom, do something." But she didn't. She didn't blink. She didn't flinch. She just stood there, silent, unshaken, as the man I feared most in this world raised his weapon higher. And then the rod came swinging down. Everything shattered. The room, my life, my heart. And right before the blow landed, I thought only one thing. Why would my own mother watch this happen? My name is Emily Carter, and if you think this is the beginning of my story, you're wrong. This was the breaking point. The moment everything I thought I knew about family, love, and loyalty turned to dust. But to understand how I ended up with my own mother standing like a stranger in the doorway, I have to take you back. I grew up in a small town in Indiana. The kind of town where people left their doors unlocked and waved at every car that drove by. My father died when I was just 9 years old, leaving behind a hole in our family no one could ever fill. After he was gone, it was just me, my mother, and my younger brother, Ethan. For a while, it felt like we were okay. We didn't have much money, but we had each other. Mom worked 2 jobs. Ethan and I leaned on each other, and I held on to the belief that family was unbreakable. That no matter how hard life got, the people who shared your blood would always stand by your side. I was wrong. When I turned 14, Mom met him. His name was Richard. At first, he seemed like a savior, charming, generous, the kind of man who smiled with all his teeth and made everyone laugh. He bought us gifts, helped with bills, and filled the silence Dad left behind with loud jokes and easy promises. But behind closed doors, Richard was a storm. He drank too much. He yelled too loud. And sometimes, when the anger boiled over, his hands didn't just hit the table, they hit us. Mom said he was just stressed. That it wasn't his fault. That love meant forgiveness, and forgiveness meant keeping quiet. So I kept quiet. But silence doesn't stop bruises from blooming on skin. It doesn't stop the way fear creeps into your bones and makes your own home feel like a battlefield. And it doesn't stop the shame that eats at you when the person who's supposed to protect you, your mother, chooses him instead. The first time Richard hit me, I was 15. I still remember the sting on my cheek, the ringing in my ears, the way Mom looked away, as if not seeing it meant it wasn't real. I wanted her to scream, to shove him out of the house, to wrap me in her arms and tell me she would never let anyone hurt me again. But she didn't. She just whispered, "Don't make him angry next time." That was the day I stopped being a child. From then on, I learned to read Richard's moods like weather reports, his footsteps, his breathing, the way his hands curled into fists. I learned how to protect Ethan, slipping him out of the room when the storm clouds gathered. And I learned how to swallow my pain, burying it so deep it became part of me. But no matter how much I tried to adapt, nothing could have prepared me for what happened that night. The night the door burst open at midnight. The night my own mother stood there and chose silence. The night Richard raised his weapon and everything inside me shattered. But here's the thing. That night wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Because what Richard and my mother didn't know was that I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I wasn't going to be their victim. I was going to make them pay. And that revenge, it started with the very moment the rod came swinging down. The metal rod slammed into the side of my shoulder, a sharp explosion of pain ripping through my body. My scream tore out before I could stop it. My knees buckled, and I crashed to the floor, my vision spinning. Through the haze, I looked up at my mother again, her eyes locked on mine. And that was when I realized something that froze me more than the pain itself. She wanted this. She wanted me broken. And in that instant, I knew whatever I had to do, no matter how far I had to go, I would never forgive her. Never. But before I could rise, before I could fight back, Richard lifted the rod again, his face twisted with rage. And then, the front door slammed downstairs. Someone else had entered the house. Who it was changed everything. The sound of the front door slamming downstairs cut through the chaos like a gunshot. For a split second, everything froze. Richard's arm was still raised, the metal rod hovering above me like a dark promise. My mother's cold eyes flickered, just slightly, as if she hadn't expected anyone else to be here at this hour. The footsteps that followed were heavy, deliberate, climbing the stairs one by one. My heart pounded in my throat. I tried to lift myself off the floor, but my body refused to obey. Pain throbbed through my shoulder like fire. Richard snarled under his breath and glanced at my mother. "Who the hell is that?" She didn't answer. She didn't move. She just kept staring at me, as if I were some disgusting secret finally spilling into the open. The footsteps stopped right outside the bedroom. For a heartbeat, silence swallowed us. Then the door flew wider, crashing against the wall. And Ethan stood there. My little brother. Except he wasn't so little anymore. He was 16 now, taller than me, his jawline sharper, his eyes harder. He wasn't the quiet kid who used to hide behind me when Richard's voice rose. No. Tonight, there was fire in his eyes, the kind I'd never seen before. "What the hell is going on here?" His voice cracked like lightning. Richard lowered the rod slightly, but the smirk on his face made bile rise in my throat. "Go back to bed, kid. This doesn't concern you." "The hell it doesn't." Ethan stepped into the room, his fists clenched. "You're beating my sister in the middle of the night, and Mom's just standing there watching? Are you insane?" My mother's lips tightened. "Ethan, don't. Just don't get involved. Don't get involved." The words nearly broke me more than the blow had. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She had chosen him, completely and without hesitation. But Ethan wasn't backing down. He took another step closer, his voice steady even though I could see the tremor in his hands. "Touch her again, Richard, and I swear." Richard laughed. A deep, cruel sound that filled the room. "Or you'll what? You're just a kid. I could break you in half before you blink." Ethan's eyes darted to me. I could see the panic hidden beneath his anger, the silent question he was asking. "What do we do?" I shook my head weakly. "Don't, Ethan. Please don't." But it was too late. Richard lunged. The rod came swinging, not at me this time, but at Ethan. My scream ripped through the air as I tried to push myself up. Ethan dodged back, the rod missing his head by inches and slamming against the wall with a sickening thud. Plaster cracked, and dust rained down. "Run, Ethan," I shouted, my voice raw. "Go, call someone, get help." But Ethan didn't run. Instead, he did something I never thought he would. He fought back. With a roar, he launched himself at Richard, tackling him with all the force his teenage body could muster. The two of them crashed to the floor, the rod clattering across the wooden boards. Richard cursed, grappling with Ethan, his fists swinging wildly. I dragged myself across the floor, my body screaming in protest. My hand stretched out toward the rod, my fingers brushing the cold metal. My vision blurred with tears and dizziness, but I clung to one thought. If I can get the rod, maybe I can end this. But then, a scream. Not mine. Not Ethan's. My mother's. "Stop it," she shrieked, her voice slicing through the fight. "Stop before you ruin everything." Her hands flew to her head, her face twisted in panic. For the first time in years, she looked scared. But it wasn't for me. It wasn't even for Ethan. It was for Richard. That realization made my stomach turn. Ethan managed to land a punch square on Richard's jaw, the crack echoing like a gunshot. Richard roared, his rage doubling, and he shoved Ethan off him with brutal strength. My brother slammed into the dresser, his head smacking the corner. "Ethan," I cried, my voice breaking. He crumpled to the floor, blood trailing down the side of his face. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the rod with both hands, ignoring the pain shooting through my shoulder. My body shook, my vision blurred, but I forced myself to my feet. Richard was turning toward Ethan again, ready to finish what he started. "Don't you dare," I whispered, my voice trembling with fury. He froze, his eyes darting to me. Then he laughed like I was some joke. "What are you gonna do, Emily? You don't have it in you." But he was wrong. Because in that moment, standing there with the rod in my hands, watching my brother bleed on the floor, and my mother standing uselessly in the doorway, something dark took root inside me. I had it in me. Every ounce of rage, every scar, every betrayal, it all burned together into something sharp, something dangerous. And as Richard took a step toward me, I lifted the rod high and swung. The sound it made when it connected with his skull was unlike anything I'd ever heard in my life. A sickening crack, a deep thud, and then silence. Richard's eyes went wide with shock before his body collapsed onto the floor, motionless. My hands shook. My breath came in ragged gasps. I stared at him, then at the blood spreading slowly beneath his head, then at my mother's face. She wasn't horrified. She wasn't even surprised. She just whispered one sentence that chilled me to my core. "You have no idea what you've just done." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The rod slipped from my hands and clattered onto the floor, the sound echoing like a death bell. Richard lay sprawled at my feet, his chest still, blood trickling across the wood like it was carving a permanent stain into our home. My own heartbeat roared in my ears, drowning out every other sound, until my mother's voice cut through it like a knife. "You have no idea what you've just done." Her words weren't filled with shock or sorrow. They were laced with venom, almost like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. My knees trembled as I backed away from Richard's body, my eyes locked on my mother. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, my throat raw. "He was going to kill us." Her face twisted, not in grief, but in rage. "Do you think anyone's going to believe that? Do you think the police will look at a teenage girl with blood on her hands and believe you acted in self-defense?" I shook my head violently. "It's the truth." But even as I said it, dread wrapped itself around me. Because I knew she was right. Richard wasn't just some drunk man in a small town. He had friends, connections, people who looked at him like a man who could do no wrong. And my mother? She was the only witness. And she hated me enough to let me burn. Ethan groaned on the floor, clutching the side of his head. His bloodied fingers smeared red streaks onto his shirt as he tried to push himself upright. His voice was weak, trembling. "We have to call someone." "An ambulance, the police?" Mom's eyes snapped toward him like daggers. "Shut up, Ethan. Do you want her sister locked away for the rest of her life? Do you want her in prison for murder?" "Murder?" My voice cracked, the words splintering inside me. "I didn't murder him. He was," but the look in her eyes told me everything. She wasn't going to protect me. She was going to protect him. Even dead, Richard mattered more to her than I ever did. "Mom," my voice was shaking. "Why are you doing this? Why are you standing there like I'm the criminal? He was hurting us. He's been hurting us for years." She stepped closer, her eyes dark. "You think I didn't know that? You think I didn't pay the price for keeping this family together? Everything we have, everything keeping this roof over our heads, it was because of him. And now you've ruined it." My stomach twisted. Keeping this family together? He was tearing us apart. He was destroying us. But she didn't care. She crouched beside Richard's body, brushing his hair back gently like he was some fallen hero instead of a monster. Her fingers lingered near the pool of blood, and then she looked up at me with a smile that made my skin crawl. "You just handed me the perfect story," she whispered. Ethan coughed, his voice raw. "What are you talking about?" She turned toward him, her smile growing wider, more sinister. They'll never believe Emily acted in self-defense. Not with her temper. Not with the way she's been fighting him for years. Everyone knows she hated him. Everyone knows she wanted him gone. My blood turned cold. She was going to frame me. The room started spinning as her words sank in. My mother, my own mother, wasn't just going to let Richard's abuse go unpunished. She was going to bury me with him. No, I whispered, my voice barely audible. You wouldn't. Oh, I would, she hissed. Because you don't understand how much I've sacrificed. You don't understand what it takes to survive in this world. And now, you'll pay for ruining it. Rage and fear boiled inside me, mixing until I could hardly breathe. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her and shake her until she admitted the truth, that she'd chosen him over us, that she'd loved him more than her own children. But before I could speak, a sudden pounding shook the walls. The front door. Someone was banging on it hard. Open up. Police. Ethan and I froze. My mother's face drained of color for just a second, and then she plastered on that fake composure she wore so well. This was it. This was the moment. If the police saw the scene as it was, the blood, the weapon, Richard's body, my mother's twisted version of events could become the truth. And I'd be the one in handcuffs. I scrambled to my feet, panic clawing in my chest. Ethan, we have to tell them everything right now before she does. But Ethan's face was pale, his body trembling. He was bleeding too much, too weak to even stand. The pounding at the door grew louder. Police. Open up or we're coming in. Mom straightened, her voice calm, steady, terrifying. Stay quiet. Let me handle this. If either of you speak, you'll regret it. I looked at Richard's lifeless body. I looked at Ethan, broken and bleeding on the floor. And then I looked at my mother, standing tall, ready to throw me to the wolves without a second thought. My chest tightened. I had seconds to decide. Do I trust the police and risk my mother's lies destroying me? Or do I stay silent and let this nightmare grow even darker? The sound of splintering would crack through the house as the front door gave way. The police were inside. And in that moment I knew whatever choice I made, nothing would ever be the same again. The pounding of boots echoed through the hallway downstairs, heavy and fast. My breath caught as beams of flashlights cut through the darkness, slicing across the walls like blades. Police. Upstairs. Move. Richard's blood pooled wider beneath him, the metallic smell thick in the air. Ethan's labored breathing filled the silence between shouts, and my mother, my own mother, stood tall, her shoulders squared like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. The first officer appeared at the top of the stairs, his gun drawn, flashlight sweeping across the bedroom. Then another and another. The room exploded with light, chaos, and shouting. Hands where I can see them. I flinched, raising my hands instinctively. My fingers trembled so badly, I could hardly keep them steady. The officers rushed in, their eyes darting between me, the weapon on the floor, and Richard's body. For a second, the whole world seemed to stop as they took in the scene. Then my mother's voice broke through. She killed him. I froze, the words hitting harder than the rod had. She killed my husband, Mom sobbed, her voice breaking perfectly on cue. Her hands flew to her face, her shoulders shaking as she pointed at me. She picked up the rod and hit him until he stopped moving. I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen. No. My voice cracked, raw with panic. That's not true. He attacked me, he attacked Ethan. Liar. Mom screamed, spinning on me with a fury that looked so real it could fool anyone. You've hated him since the day he came into this house. You swore you'd find a way to get rid of him. And now look at what you've done. 2 officers closed in on me, their hands hovering over their cuffs. Wait, I cried, stumbling backward. Please, you have to listen. He was beating me. He was beating both of us. Ethan saw it. Ethan, tell them. Every head turned toward my brother. Ethan's face was pale, his blood-soaked shirt sticking to his chest. He tried to sit up, his lips parting. My heart pounded, clinging to him like he was my last lifeline. But before he could speak, my mother's voice slashed through the air again. "He's confused," she wailed. He hit his head when Emily went crazy. "He doesn't know what he saw. Please don't listen to him." The officers glanced between us, suspicion in their eyes, but my mother's tears were flowing freely now, her voice trembling with conviction. "She's dangerous," she whispered, pointing at me with a shaking finger. "Look at her. Look at what she did." And that was when I realized she'd been rehearsing this. Maybe not the details, but the story. The way her voice cracked at the right moment. The way her eyes shimmered with just enough tears. She wasn't just protecting Richard's memory. She was burying me alive. "No." My voice broke as the first cuff closed around my wrist. "No, please, you don't understand." I twisted to face Ethan, desperation clawing at me. "Tell them, Ethan. Please, if you don't, they'll take me away. You know what happened." He stared at me, his eyes glassy, his lips trembling. And then, "Stop." His voice tore out, weak but defiant. "It wasn't her. It was him. Richard. He was attacking us. Emily saved my life. She saved me." The room went still. The officers froze, their grip on me loosening just slightly. My chest heaved, tears spilling down my face as hope flickered for the first time in what felt like forever. But my mother, her face twisted, her mask cracking. For a split second, she looked like the monster she really was. Then she lunged forward screaming, "He's lying. He's brainwashed by her." She turned him against me. 2 officers grabbed her, holding her back, but her screams filled the room like sirens. "She's a murderer. She killed him. You'll regret it if you don't lock her up." The officer closest to me glanced down at Richard's lifeless body, then at Ethan, then finally at me. His jaw tightened. "Both of them are coming in," he muttered. "We'll sort out at the station." My stomach dropped. They yanked me forward, cuffing my other wrist, cold steel biting into my skin. Behind me, another officer lifted Ethan carefully to his feet, supporting his weight. The night blurred into sirens, flashing lights, and neighbors gathered outside, their faces pressed to windows as I was shoved into the back of a police car. Their whispers followed me, sharp and cruel. "Did you hear? Emily Carter killed her stepdad," she snapped. Poor woman. Her own daughter did it right in front of her. My mother stood on the porch, wrapped in a blanket one of the officers had draped over her shoulders. She looked fragile, broken, the very image of a grieving widow. And when her eyes met mine through the window of the police car, she smiled. Not a soft smile. Not a sad smile. A smile that told me she'd won. For now. Because as the car pulled away, one thought burned hotter than my fear, brighter than the flashing red and blue lights around me. She thought she'd buried me tonight. But this was just the beginning. And when I came back, she would regret ever standing in that doorway. The station smelled like bleach and old coffee. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, humming like flies around a carcass. My wrists ached from the cuffs, the metal biting deeper every time I moved. They shoved me into a small room with gray walls and a single metal table. A camera blinked red in the corner, and 2 chairs sat opposite me like executioners waiting for their turn. I could still hear the sirens in my head. I could still see Ethan's pale face as they wheeled him into another car. And above all, I could still see her, my mother, standing on that porch, wrapped in a blanket, selling the perfect lie. The door opened with a groan. 2 detectives walked in. One was older, bald with deep lines etched into his face, his eyes sharp like he'd seen every kind of monster the world could make. The other was younger, his jaw tight, his gaze suspicious. They sat across from me, their hands folded neatly on the table. The bald one spoke first. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but I could feel the weight behind it. "Emily Carter, do you understand why you're here?" I swallowed hard. My throat was dry as sandpaper. "Because my stepfather is dead." The younger detective leaned forward. "Because you killed him." My chest tightened. "I didn't kill him. I defended myself. He came into my room, he had a rod, he was going to hurt me. He was going to hurt Ethan too." I didn't have a choice. The bald detective studied me quietly, his eyes unreadable. The younger one, though, scoffed. Funny, that's not what your mother says. Of course. She's lying, I snapped, my voice shaking. She's been lying for years. She knew what he was doing to us. She let it happen. The younger detective slammed his hand on the table. The sound made me flinch. Watch yourself. You're in deep enough already. Your mother was in tears when we got there. She said she tried to stop you, but you wouldn't listen. That you lost control. Tears stung my eyes. No, that's not what happened. Please, you have to talk to Ethan. He saw everything. He knows the truth. The bald detective finally spoke again, his voice measured. Your brother was injured. He's in the hospital. We'll get his statement, but until then, all we have is what we saw and what your mother told us. Silence hung heavy in the room. My hands trembled in my lap. I wanted to scream, to tear down the walls, to shake them until they understood. But all I had were my words, and they felt so small against the weight of my mother's lies. The younger detective leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. Here's what I think. I think you hated your stepfather. I think you waited until everyone was asleep. And then you snapped. I didn't. I shouted, my voice cracking. He came at me first. He would have killed us. The door burst open. A uniformed officer stepped in, a folder in his hand. He handed it to the bald detective, who flipped it open. His eyes scanned the page, his expression shifting ever so slightly. What is it? The younger detective asked. The bald detective slid the folder across the table. A photo stared up at me. Richard's body, sprawled on the floor, the rod beside him. And next to it, notes from the medical examiner. Blunt force trauma to the head, the bald detective murmured. Cause of death, 1 blow. 1 blow. I blinked, my chest heaving. See? It was 1 hit. I wasn't trying to kill him. I was trying to stop him. But the younger detective wasn't convinced. His lip curled. Or maybe you got lucky. Maybe you didn't mean to stop with 1. The bald detective raised a hand, silencing him. Then he looked at me, really looked like he was searching for something beyond my words. Emily, why would your mother lie? The question hit me like a punch. Because how do you explain betrayal so deep it feels like a knife in your ribs? How do you make strangers believe that the woman who gave birth to you would rather protect a monster than her own child? I lowered my eyes, my voice trembling. Because she loved him more than us. Because she always has. The room went quiet. The younger detective shifted uncomfortably, but the bald one didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on me, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw something there, doubt, maybe even understanding. But then the door opened again. Another officer poked his head in. Detective Hughes? We've got the mother ready for her statement. My stomach dropped. I could picture it already. My mother sitting there, her voice trembling just enough, her tears falling at the perfect moments. She'd tell them how dangerous I was, how she'd begged me to stop, how she'd watched in horror as her daughter turned into a killer. And they'd believe her. Because why wouldn't they? She was the grieving widow. I was the girl with blood on her hands. The bald detective stood, gathering the folder. We'll be back. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving me alone with the hum of the lights and the pounding of my heart. I stared at the mirrored wall across from me, knowing she was probably in the next room right now, spinning her web tighter and tighter around me. But here's what she didn't know. She might have been the better liar, but I wasn't going to roll over and let her destroy me. Not this time. Because I had a plan forming in my mind, one that would rip the mask off her face and make the whole world see her for what she really was. And when that day came, she wouldn't just lose me. She'd lose everything. The word not guilty should have set me free. Everyone said it was over, that justice had been served, that I could finally start breathing again. But as the judge's gavel slammed down, I felt no relief. Because across that courtroom, my mother was smiling at me. Not the trembling, weeping widow everyone else saw, but a cold, sharp smile that told me I hadn't won anything. I had humiliated her, stripped her of the role she loved to play, the perfect mother, the innocent victim. And now she would come for me. I walked out of that courthouse with Ethan by my side, his hand clutching mine like he could anchor me to safety. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved in my face, voices shouting questions I couldn't answer. How does it feel to walk free? Do you regret what you did? Are you afraid of your mother's reaction? That last one cut too deep. I didn't answer, but in my heart, I knew the truth. Yes. I was terrified. The days that followed were a strange kind of prison. The walls of my room felt closer than the cell I'd spent nights in. Whispers followed me everywhere. At the store, in the park, even in the hallways of school. I wasn't Emily anymore. I was the girl who killed her stepdad. But gossip wasn't the worst of it. It was her. I saw her everywhere. At the edge of the parking lot when Ethan picked me up. At the grocery store, lingering by the apples, her eyes never leaving mine. Once, late at night, I swore I saw her shadow standing across the street, watching my window. And each time, that same chilling smile. I told Ethan, but he tried to reassure me. She's just trying to scare you, Em. She can't touch you anymore. But I knew better. My mother didn't need fists or rods. She had something far more dangerous, her words. She had already poisoned the town once. She could do it again. The first real blow came a week later. I walked into school, my head down, determined to ignore the stares. But then I heard the whispers louder than ever. She's unstable. She threatened her mom last night. I heard she tried to hurt Ethan too. I froze. The words weren't random. They were planted. Carefully, strategically. And I knew exactly who planted them. By the end of the day, my teachers were looking at me differently. My counselor asked if I was coping okay. Even Ethan's mom, when I went over to their house, pulled him aside, whispering loud enough for me to hear. Be careful with her, Ethan. It was happening again. My mother was turning the world against me. That night, I couldn't sleep. My chest felt heavy, my mind racing. I kept replaying her lips forming those two words in the courtroom. It's not over. She was right. If I didn't stop her, she'd ruin me. She'd ruin Ethan. She'd twist every person in this town into believing her lies until I was left with nothing, not even myself. I sat up in bed, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. For years, I'd been the scared little girl in the corner, watching, waiting, praying someone would save me. But no one ever did. Maybe it was time I stopped waiting. Maybe it was time I became the one who fought back. The thought terrified me. But beneath the fear, something else stirred, something I hadn't felt before. Strength. Resolve. A fire that whispered, she's not the only one who can play this game. And that's when the plan began to form. If my mother wanted a war, then fine. This time, I'd be ready for her. I thought I was free. But freedom isn't just about unlocked doors or walking streets without handcuffs. Freedom is silence. Silence from the voices that haunt you. Silence from the lies that follow you. And my mother had never given me silence. Everywhere I turned, her poison spread. Teachers doubted me. Friends drifted away. Even Ethan, though he loved me, looked at me sometimes like he wondered if the whispers were true. That's what she did best. She didn't need to touch me anymore. She planted doubt and watched it bloom. But I had decided no more. I wasn't going to be the broken daughter she fed off of. I wasn't going to let her turn me into a monster in everyone's eyes. If she wanted war, I was going to end it. The breaking point came on a cold, stormy night. Rain hammered the windows as I sat alone in the kitchen, my heart pounding. Ethan had just left after another argument. We were fighting more these days, thanks to her rumors. And then came the knock. Slow, sharp, familiar. I knew it was her. Every bone in my body screamed to hide, but I forced myself to the door and opened it. And there she was, my mother, soaked in rain, her eyes burning with the same twisted fire I'd seen when I was a little girl. You think you've won, don't you? She hissed. You think this is over because of a verdict? You don't understand. You will never escape me. You are me. Her words sliced through me. For years, I had feared that I was her shadow, her reflection, doomed to repeat her sins. But tonight, I saw her for what she truly was.
Weak.
Bitter. Empty. And I realized I was nothing like her. I lifted my phone, already recording. My voice shook at first, but then it grew steadier. "Say it again, Mom," I whispered. "Say how you'll never let me go. Say how you'll make them believe I'm crazy. Say it loud enough for everyone to hear." Her eyes widened as she realized. She tried to backpedal, but it was too late. The words had already been spoken. The mask had slipped. For once, she wasn't the grieving widow. She wasn't the victim. She was the abuser, exposed in the rawest form. And this time I had proof. The recording spread faster than even her lies ever had. People finally saw her for who she was. The neighbors stopped whispering about me. The teachers stopped questioning me. Ethan's mother hugged me with tears in her eyes and said, "I'm sorry I doubted you." And my mother? She vanished. Some say she left town. Others say she lives in the next city, still trying to spin stories that no one listens to anymore. But to me, it doesn't matter. For the first time in my life, her shadow is gone. Now, when I stand at the window at night, I don't see her across the street. I see my own reflection. Not broken. Not silenced.
Free.
And maybe freedom doesn't mean forgetting what she did. Maybe it means carrying the scars without letting them own me. For the first time, I'm not afraid of the silence. Because the silence is mine.